Good afternoon, grade 9 students, and welcome to our Quarter 1, Module 1, Week 2 discussion with a focus on the circulatory system. So first off, let us first identify our most essential learning competency, which is to explain how the respiratory and the circulatory systems work together to transport nutrients, gases, and other molecules to and from the different parts of the body. We have three objectives. The first one is to identify the different parts of the circulatory system. Second is to differentiate the different types of the circulation. And lastly, we have explained the respiratory and circulatory systems work together to maintain homeostasis. Let us first have our review and background information. So last time we have already discussed the respiratory system. We have identified its different parts and we have established that at the alveoli, it is where the gas exchange happens. So that exchange of gases that happen in the alveoli or on the air sacs of the lungs, that process is what we call the diffusion. So when we inhale, the oxygen in the air enters the body through our nose, then the nasal passage towards the trachea, into the bronchi and the bronchioles, and then finally to the alveoli. Again, it is in the alveoli that the respiratory system work together with the circulatory system to deliver the most essential nutrients, which is the oxygen, to the different parts of the body. As we have said earlier, in the alveoli, the exchange of gases happen. And this exchange of gases is called diffusion. An alveolus, which is the singular term for alveoli, is surrounded by the smallest of the blood vessels, which we call the capillaries or capillaries for some. The walls of the alveolus shares its membrane with the surrounding capillary that allow oxygen and carbon dioxide to pass through it. The oxygen passes through the walls and attach itself to the red blood cells, which travels back to the heart. At the same time, the carbon dioxide molecules in the blood passes through the walls of the alveolus. The carbon dioxide molecules will eventually be blown out of the body with the next exhalation or when we exhale. So we have the diagram on our left side or on our right side rather that shows this process. So you have the focus or we have the blow up of the alveolus or the alveoli on our illustration or the diagram below. So surrounding an air sac is a capillary. So this is where the exchange of gases happen. So oxygen from the alveoli passes through the capillary through diffusion, and at the same time the carbon dioxide in the capillary will then be passing through or passing into the air sac, which will eventually be exhaled or expelled from the body through exhalation. And then the oxygen now in our blood will then be delivered towards the heart so that it can be delivered by the blood to the different organs and body parts of our body. So that is our review and a little background information of the circulatory system and how it works together with the respiratory system. So let us have our first part for this week's focus on the circulatory system. So we have the function of the system. The function of the circulatory system is to transport oxygen and nutrients to the body cells and to carry the oxygenated or the oxygen-poor blood and carbon dioxide back to the heart and lungs. Its major parts are the heart, blood, and blood vessels. The heart is described as a muscular pump which keeps the blood flowing to each part of our body. The blood circulates through a closed system, which means blood in the circulatory system stays inside the vessels. Generally, our blood circulates from our heart, then throughout our body, and then back to our heart again in every 60 seconds or in every minute. So that is how fast our blood is being transported to the different parts of our body. So we now go to the blood, which is called our fluid transport. We have the different parts of the blood as shown in our diagrams. You have the red blood cell, you have the white blood cell, the platelet, and the plasma. They are the components of our blood. So you have blood is described as being a tissue made of fluid, cells, and fragment of cells. So this fluid or the flowing portion of the blood is called plasma. Plasma in turn is a straw-colored fluid and makes up about 55% of the total volume of the red or volume of the blood. The red and the white blood cells and platelets are suspended in the plasma. So they are located in the plasma. We have three types of blood vessels. So blood vessels are the pathways of circulation. So we can say that they are actually the roads where your blood flows to the different parts of your body. So we have arteries, the veins, and the capillaries. So arteries carry blood away from the heart and then towards the rest of the body. So they carry oxygenated or the oxygen-rich blood, except for the pulmonary arteries, which carry the oxygenated blood to the lungs for oxygenation. Later on, I am going to present to you a diagram of the heart that shows where the pulmonary arteries are located. So they branch off into smaller arteries called arterioles. Arterioles enter tissues where they branch into the smallest blood vessels, the capillaries. The second type of our blood vessel is your veins. So veins is described as the carriers of blood from the rest of the body back towards the heart. So they carry the oxygenated or the oxygen poor blood. So this time it excludes pulmonary veins, which carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. So in our bodies, oxygen-poor blood has a darker red color. So yung wala daw oxygen na dala-dala na dugo, they have a darker red color. And the smallest of the blood vessels are called the capillaries or the capillaries. So they move blood to and from the cells of the body. So these blood vessels are so small that blood cells must move through them in a single file. So its walls are very thin that materials can easily diffuse into and out of them. So since it is very thin, so if it surrounds your air sac, so that means that the oxygen and carbon dioxide can pass through its walls and then towards the air sac. So you have the diffusion or the exchange of gases. So that is why capillaries actually are the ones surrounding our air sacs or your alveoli. And then the vital organ of the circulatory system is what we call the heart or the vital pump. So you have here the different parts of the heart as shown in our diagram. So thousands of blood vessels in our body would be of little use if there is no organ that will move blood through them. The heart moves blood through these vessels. So in fact, the main function of the heart is to keep blood moving constantly in our body. Without the heart, the blood will not flow into the different parts of our body, which means oxygen will not reach those vital organs. So that will be a problem. So if our brain does not receive enough oxygen, it would lead to stroke. If our legs will not have enough oxygen, so it will feel numb, as well as our arms and other body parts. So our body will not function properly. The heart is divided into four chambers. So you have the right atrium, right ventricle, and the left ventricle. these two upper chambers are smaller as compared to these two lower chambers. And the right and the left ventricle are divided by a thick wall which we call the septum. So this is your septum. And as you can see on this diagram, each chamber of the heart has its own valve or has its own door. We can call these valves as the doors to the different chambers of the heart, and they prevent blood from flowing backwards. So these valves open when the atria or the atrium, right atrium for example, or the ventricle contract, and shuts when it relaxes. So again, it opens and closes for the blood to pass to the right ventricle, and then it closes so that the blood will not go back to the right atrium as our example here. So the same way goes for the blood when it once it enters the left atrium, our mitral valve closes so that when the heart pumps the blood, it will not go back to the left atrium, but instead it will pass through this aortic valve towards the aorta so that the oxygen-rich blood will be delivered to the different parts of our body. So those are the four chambers of the heart. We now go to the different types of circulation. The circulating blood follows two separate pathways that meet at the heart. So these pathways are called pulmonary and systemic circulation. All of your blood travels through both of these pathways. So they belong to the different types of the circulation. So let us discuss the first one. Pulmonary circulation. From the word itself, pulmonary, so that means it involves the lungs. 'Di ba sa atin sa pag may sakit tayo ng o sinisipon or inuubo, ang tawag sa atin ay pinupulmonya ka. So you have that clue word. Pulmonary involves the lungs and the heart. So this circulation occurs only between these two vital organs. Again, pulmonary circulation occurs only between the heart and the lungs. The main function of this circulation is to carry deoxygenated or oxygen-poor blood to the lungs, where it picks up oxygen and expels excess carbon dioxide and water, and again carries oxygenated or oxygen-rich blood back to the heart. So each lung is supplied by its own pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein. So this circulation, this pulmonary circulation, is the one involved in the exchange of gases. So in this circulation, the fusion or the exchange of gases happens between the walls of your alveoli and the capillaries. So you have the oxygen being delivered or transported to your blood, and then carbon dioxide on the other hand is transferred to the air sacs to be expelled, and then oxygen will be delivered to the heart. The second type of circulation is the systemic circulation. Again, from the word itself, systemic. So you have the system. So we can have a clue that this type of circulation involves the circulation of the blood to the rest of the body. However, it exclude or except for the lungs. Kasi again, lungs and heart are in the pulmonary circulation. So for the systemic circulation, this occurs between the heart and the rest of the body except for the lungs. So the main function of this circulation is to carry oxygenated blood to all cells and parts of the body and transport the oxygenated or the oxygen-poor blood back to the heart. Systemic circulation starts when the blood leaves the left ventricle, and the blood then flows through the torso, arms, legs, head, and then reverts back to the heart. The third type of circulation is the coronary circulation. So as we have understood earlier, we say that different organs need oxygen in order to function. So that means the heart itself also needs oxygen in order to function. And for that to happen, we have the coronary circulation. So this type of circulation consists of the blood vessels that supply blood to and remove blood from the heart. So the vessels that provide blood high in oxygen levels to the heart are called the coronary arteries. Again, the heart itself needs oxygen in order to function. So, ang magdi-deliver ng oxygen papunta sa ating heart mismo are the coronary arteries, and they are also the ones that will deliver the carbon dioxide as a waste product to the different parts of the heart to be expelled through diffusion in our respiratory system. So those are your three types of circulation. We now have the blood flow in the heart. So once we know the basic structure and actions of the heart, it is now easier to understand how the oxygenated or oxygen-rich and the oxygenated or oxygen-poor blood flow through this organ. We now proceed to the blood flow in the heart. So we are going to follow the flow of the blood in the different chambers of the heart. If you are familiar with the infinity sign, sa atin mukha siya nakahigang letter H. So this is your infinity sign. We can actually see this as the flow of the blood in our heart. So let us follow the steps on how the blood flows. Okay? So first off, we have the oxygenated or the oxygen-poor blood from the body that enters the right atrium. So the oxygen poor blood from the body, this means it now carries the carbon dioxide, enters our right atrium. And then, through that tricuspid valve. As we all know, all things that are upwards eventually goes downward because of the pull of the gravity. So that is also true with our blood flow. So the blood from the right atrium flows down through the right ventricle. And once our heart pumps or contracts the right ventricle, so it pushes up. The blood is being pushed up through the pulmonary valve. This time, the tricuspid valve is actually closed so that the blood will not flow back to the right atrium. It is only the pulmonary valve that is open. So, the heart pumps the blood through this and then towards the pulmonary artery. So, we all know that the pulmonary artery is then connected to our lungs. So, we have the exchange of gases. So, this oxygen-poor blood will then be returning towards the heart carrying oxygen because diffusion already happened in the lungs. So, the oxygen-rich blood now enters through the pulmonary vein and then towards the left atrium. And then you have your mitral valve is open. Again, because of the gravity, the blood will flow downwards towards the left ventricle. And then again, the heart will contract, pushing the blood towards the aortic valve and then to the different parts of, towards the aorta for the blood to be delivered to the different parts of the body. Once the oxygen is delivered to the different parts of the body and the carbon dioxide is picked up as a waste product, the blood will again enter our heart through the superior vena cava and then the process will again start. So, as you can see, based on our illustration, somehow it resembles the infinity sign on how the blood flows to and from our heart. For the development portion of our lesson, we have the respiratory and circulatory systems working together. Every cell in our body needs nutrients and oxygen in order to function, but it also needs to get rid of the waste products. The circulatory system transports blood and other materials. It carries essential supplies to the cells and extracts their wastes. The organization of the blood vessels in the circulatory system also keeps oxygen-poor blood from mixing with oxygen-rich blood. While in the respiratory system, gas exchange takes place. You can think of it as a supply warehouse where the blood can load up oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. The lungs of the respiratory system are the only place in our body where gases in the blood are exchanged with gases from the atmosphere. The respiratory system and the circulatory system work together to maintain homeostasis in the face of constant change. So we can say that homeostasis is actually the balance in our body. Every time that we exercise, lie down to rest, or simply stand up, we change our needs for oxygen and nutrients. As a result, our heart speeds up or slows down and breathes faster or slower depending on our activity. So that is how the respiratory and the circulatory system work together. The respiratory system is the one responsible for um, for loading up our body with the oxygen, and you have the circulatory system is the one responsible for delivering uh, those oxygen and the different nutrients to the different parts of our body. So without the respiratory system, circulatory system will not be able to do its function. And then, without the circulatory system in return, the respiratory system will not also be able to function properly because it will not be able to expel the waste material, which is the carbon dioxide. So, hand in hand, these two systems work together to help us maintain homeostasis or balance in the body. Without each system, each one will not function properly. And that's it for our discussion of the circulatory system for week 2. So hope you have understood the different parts and the function of the circulatory system, as well as how the blood flows to and from the heart.